big score. I got it all from my neighbor. I'm guessing that's, I mean, stainless, I'm guessing it's probably $2,000 worth. And it gave me that air tank. So I don't know if it's still worth anything. I know they have to be certified and everything, and I don't know when the last time it was filled up, but it'd be cool if it'd still work. If you look at my driveway, it looks like I have a sickness. Look at all those S10s. Kind of funny. The red one's my neighbor's, the one who gave me the metal. Okay, it is time for me to start my next video. This is height. This is ride height. The front tires, you can see there, sticking out about 3 inches more than the back on each side. So that's going to be perfect for my 2-inch spacers that I'm getting. So the Blazer is going to be, what, 3 inches, 3.5 or whatever that is, 3 inch longer than standard wheelbase and a couple inches wider. So on each side to make it a good stance and good stability. But I really like it. When I had it before, those blocks right there were a little bit more to the left, and so the center of gravity was here, and so the springs really bounced up. Well, now that I put the blocks on the front, the center of gravity moved, and there's a lot more weight on the rear end. And so you can see how it's going to be. When that happened, I actually ended up finding out that my first design shackle I got right here was 1 inch too short. So that cost me $84 to fix, but I did get longer shackles. Now it circulates, it does not hit the frame. Put an extra bolt in there on here, and I did all the studs. So today, and just like that video at the very beginning, I got my free stainless steel 1/8 inch metal that I'm going to use for pretty much all the fab, with the bumpers, the sliders, the rock sliders underneath, everything. So that stainless is going to be nice. The wire for it was a little bit of money, about $200 for the wire. So I'm going to do the rest of that fabbing when I get to it. Now I am going to tear this apart. Okay, the front is probably about 20, as in right to the center. The lowest point here is probably 17. That's going to be those two arms coming down, and it's probably actually going to be 17 because I'm going to do a whatever you call it, a slider all the way across. So I bet you that's going to be 17 all the way across on the front. I want a rock guard for all that on the front there because it's probably going to take out the diff. Almost 22 for the center of the frame. And then you probably already know diffs of 14 bolts. These are not exactly 35-inch tires, but it's looking 10. They'll probably bet you about 11 because these are 33s-ish, or 33s and a half. They're, I don't know what they are. 313s, or sorry, 315s. So I feel real bad that the interior looks so nice, and I'm going to be tearing it apart. So I've thought about using this as a daily driver as well as racing, like they do a lot of the JKs, and so I feel real bad tearing this out because it looks so nice. But we'll see. For now, I'm going to take these seats out. I rip all the carpet out, all the plastics, everything, and I may reinstall this seat just up until February or something, and then put it back. But that's going to be my next project. Okay, now my boy is videoing. Decided to get a little bit closer and change the lighting, and you can look at it now.
Boing, 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 boing.
Okay, so I set up a lot of stuff on my table to talk about. because I'm working on a lot of things. So I took my slip yoke eliminator cap off the end there, and I took an old one that I had and I cut it off. And these are all the little cuts. I did a lot of little cuts and then grinded it into the best circle I can, and then totally stuck it in there with JB Weld. I was going to aluminum weld it, but I already had my seal in, and I didn't want the heat, because you have to heat up this unit or the piece to 500, 700 degrees before you can weld it, as in filler rod is what I was going to use. I don't have a whatever you call it, a welding aluminum TIG welding wand, so I decided I was just going to JB Weld it. So if you're going to do the same thing, something to watch out for is you want to drill out that end there, because it goes really deep, so that the sensor can be straight. Otherwise it's kind of cockeyed a little bit. But anyways, if you look at that, how the span there and the span here, as in the bearing, this is the existing one with the speed sensor here, then you can see how well that is as in aligned. I had to get a little bit creative though. Okay, so everyone knows that JB Weld does not harden in 5 minutes, even though the package does say that it hardens in 5 minutes. That you got to hold it there for a while. And so what I did is I put a couple of pieces of metal here, and I took the speed sensor gear itself and I stuck it so it lined up real tight to here, and there's an 1/8 inch gap here, and which that's what it needs to be. And since the speed sensor is magnetic, you can see how it's holding it. It actually held itself in place while it hardened. So that's a trick to use. Try to pull it off. There you go. That's a trick to use to make sure that it's the right distance as well as level as it's hardening. If you choose to do that, that's something that I recommend doing for that. Okay, next, I recharged my K&N filter. That black Blazer I had a K&N filter, so I just stuck it in this red one and recharged it. So that's another thing I did. I bought this new helmet, and I think it is pretty sweet. If you can see here, when you're welding, you can see everything in the view. It's not just the one little spot. Here you can see the line, you can see your path, your welding. And since I'm going to be doing a lot of welding with the armor and everything, I better get a nice helmet. My boy saw it, and he wants to wear it constantly. It's too expensive just to play around with. So I was looking at welding wire, and I found this beauty, and I'm so excited. It just came in the mail today. This is stainless steel wire for my welder. It's a flux wire. But when I've seen how it's welding, it's amazing. Like, this is probably the best flux wire I think I've ever seen weld. And since I'm welding with stainless, I need this with the stainless everything. So I can't wait for that. This is also nothing I was going to talk about last time, but I forgot. It's just to make notice if you're interested. This is a tool that you need to take your hub off on a 14 bolt. And there is a chuck here, but I've never used it. You just spin it off with your hands, and when you spin it back on with your hands also, you just want it hand tight. Otherwise you're going to over torque your hub bearing, and that's what's just beyond that axle when you pull it out. Okay, in the last video I started cleaning out the Blazer, and I actually got it all ripped out. I was going to try to save everything and try to sell it to someone who may need it, but then I got to the point that going around these seat belts and things, I just said screw it and just ripped it out. And here it is. Here's all the carpet and the plastics. And if you've ever known anything about these Blazers, especially the 2-doors, when they get older and you start bouncing down the road, these little plastic pieces, that's the only thing that's holding these plastics on. And they just sound like, I don't know, horrible as you're bouncing down the road. Let me go from this other end here. I decided to keep the rear seats. You can see them right there. I would like to put those, or keep those in, so that I can take my family and stuff riding in it. I don't want it to be a strictly off-road rig. But with that said, you can see the edge there. how it's really low and then it goes up. It provides for better articulation in the rear, and also axle, I guess, movement. I can put full-size shocks on here, or full size that they allow, so I'm pretty excited about that. I'm going to keep, this is the heater for the rear if I need it. I'm going to keep all the heater and air conditioner, all that in it at this time. We'll see what happens later. Pulling it up, the carpet was a lot easier than a Cherokee that I did once, but with that said, there's little mats of like tar, if you can see that, just black tar that they use that for the, I guess, the glue and such, but when you hit those, it is a pain in the butt to clean up. So I'm going to clean that up a little bit more. Let's see if you can see any more here. I guess just a little bit on the edges. It has that tar stuff to help stick things, but trying to, and over there down by the transmission, that stuff's a pain in the butt to get off, so I'll have to spend a little more time pulling that apart. But I think I might use the stock hold downs here. I'll probably put the a gas tank and then like a frame, and then the spare tire on top is probably what I'm thinking, and then maybe a gas inlet right here, drill a hole is probably what's going to happen. But today what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish up that, putting that slip yoke eliminator kit back together, and I'll put the T-case back in, and then I'm going to start on the bumpers and the sliders. I do like this right here. The body has screws. This is from the plastic piece, but I'll use that to help mock up my bumper, and I'm going to build it a piece at a time with that stainless steel, and I'll use bumpers that I have from previous stuff, and I'll use that to help with the mock-up with the front and the back. Okay, I was going to only stick it out about 2 inches from the bottom, but because the blades are so round, I figured I should stick it out 4 inches, so it does provide some protection to the door. It's not exactly 4 inches, it's actually sticking out a little bit more. I'm going to have to trim it just a little bit, push it in a little more, but that's basically the idea of the edge and that 1 inch little bend there that came with the sheet metal, which is good. And then I'll just weld on the bottom of that edge and go straight down from there. So that kind of gives you an idea of what it'll look like. I think every S10 Blazer owner, or just S10 truck in general, you will have to do something like this to your doors. One is replace the pins in the door because the door sags, and then the spring, you have to squeeze it with a vise, put a wires around it, put it in place, then cut the wires, pull them out to get this in and out. Also, they notoriously crack right where the handle is that attaches the door. That's how you shut the door. And this is what I do. This is the stuff that's for drywall construction, just a netting, and I put epoxy around it, and it helps seal everything in. This particular door is my neighbor's. He's the one who gave me the stainless steel, and he cracked it all the way. The crack goes all along here. It's barely attached here, and then it cracks here, and then all the way up. So I put epoxy here for him, and I'm also changing his doors, or his pins. This was so bad that this whole thing's broke out, so I put a piece of metal here. This side wasn't so bad. I was able to throw it in and use that. But on that little netting there, I have to put a little drill hole through there, drill hole through here, and then install it, and that'll be good as new. When you're installing these pins, I also, that's what this spring in my hand is. When I did the slider here, the bottom of the door was rubbing here, so I put in the new door pins on mine. And actually, if you do the top one first is what I like to do, then the bottom one, and it's a little easier. You got to be really careful though, because these brass pieces, they'll break apart as you're putting them in. So you got to be careful so it doesn't do that. And then this goes right there once I put it in the vise. So things to keep in mind, and we'll get that door fixed up. I forgot to make a comment about the epoxy that I use. I've in the past mainly used JB Weld, but the Gorilla Glue epoxy, I tried that when I was working on this door, and I think I like the Gorilla Glue better than the JB Weld. It seems to set up much quicker. I did find a good way to use epoxy is you put just a little bit of hardener, or you squeeze it in there so it has both the hardener and the main, whatever you call it, epoxy, and you mix it all up, and I just let it sit, and because it'll be kind of thin and runny, it will spread out. If you're doing it on something thin like this, you can actually put your finger underneath of it and feel if it's getting warm. If it's getting warm, that's good. It's starting to set up. It's doing its chemical reaction. Then you put in more epoxy, and then you mix it all up. When you do that, the chemical reaction's already starting. When you mix it up, it'll actually start to gel up pretty quick. Instead of it being runny and just go everywhere, it'll actually start puddling up and on your stick. And that is the absolute best time to use it. You just take that and you smear it where you need it. It's going to move a little bit, but not much, compared to if you just mix it and put it on. It just runs everywhere. I find that I find doing that works the best with epoxy. You start the chemical reaction, you get it going, you mix the other stuff, and then you can place it. So that's a tip that would work out well when you're working on these doors also. And this is this netting drywall tape I was showing you before. They come in rolls like regular tape, and they do have that perforated netting there. And when you do pull these off, they do stick slightly and will help hold on the door when you're working on it. So this is it. I mean, when you pull it, I think you can see it is kind of sticky. It's sticking, and it's sticky on this side, and that does help hold everything and keep it together and in place when you're working on those doors. So I highly suggest using this when you're doing these doors. Okay, I have started the bumpers and sliders. I think this video is going to be more of tips on things that I've ran into. So this bumper, this is what I'm going to do, is I'm going to put this like this, and then I'm going to put a top one that goes wider. And possibly what I'll do after that is hook a tire frame that goes up and around and put the tire on here with joints on the bottom, and then hook it so it falls down and comes to the ground. That's probably what I'll do there. While I was welding this side skid plate on, or slider, I found out that it just was not welding right. It just looked like crap. Yeah, you can see that, I'm sorry. It was just crap. And after reviewing the website on this Blue Devil stainless steel, it needs higher voltage. I did some test runs, and I know, absolutely disgusting. I was pretty frustrated. And so what I ended up doing is my welder is pre-programmable. In other words, you say which wire, stuff like that, and it'll tell you how much voltage and wire speed. The highest I could get on 0.3 or 0.35 was 24 volts, and it still wouldn't go high enough. 20 volts was only on a 110 outlet. I wired my outlet over there for 220, and I was able to get this up to 25, but even that, it still wasn't hot enough. So after I did the 25 volt, these are the welds for the 25 volt, which isn't too bad. They're just higher than I would like. I'd like it to be flatter. And so then what I did is I went back to my welder. I'm like, it has to get higher than 25 volts. And so I pre-programmed it for, well, it says here, it says 0.035. When I went through the settings, I went to 0.045. So the biggest wire I could get, and I could get it up to here. So I don't know how I did that. Anyways, when you look at your welder, if you cannot adjust this all the way up, and it's programmable like the newer welders, you want to do everything you can, look at the settings, and try to get your voltage up to 27, 28. Wire speed a minimum around 400 to 450, and it'll weld the best. And I welded pretty thick here just to kind of see, and you can see it's actually it's not that bad. So it's not cupping. I just did like a quick weld. That's my very first test weld. Still, that's not perfect, but you know, it looks a whole hell of a lot better than this other disgusting stuff that it was doing. So I highly recommend, if you do stainless, it's going to need more voltage, and do some practice welds before you even start. I'm going to go back to those sliders, and I'll probably put another weld over the top of those just to cover up that disgusting crap. I'll grind it down a little bit too and then redo it. So that is a tip for welding with stainless and this bluedog welding wire. So I guess that's it. I actually might post this video. I'm going to see how many minutes I have left, and then I will add everything from my springs and up till today. Oh, and I did get, I don't know if I did this on a video yet, but check these puppies out. I'm pretty excited about this. This is a Ballistic Fab. I have my wheel spacers and Ballistic Fabrication, so that'll go right there on my tire, stick out a little bit more, and give me, my Jeep will be, or Blaze will be much more stable. Anyways, that's my Ballistic Fabs wheel spacers, and also sponsored by Ballistic, so highly recommend them. And thanks a lot, and we'll see you guys later.